I've always said to people, don't ask what your title is. Don't even ask how much more money you're going to make. Just do it. And once you do it, life gets pretty easy.
The responsibility, the execution, the performance, like the money tends to correlate over time.
It
and then
always
the titles
does. Without a doubt, it always does. Maybe not exactly when you want it.
Yeah, and there's exceptions to every rule, but if you run it kind of as a program, if you outwork everybody, if you outperform everyone, if you're constantly like, hey, I'll do that, I'll do that,
Right.
I'll do that, without saying, there's a philosophy, and let me know what your thoughts are. It's like, you love the people who are like, I'll do the job today and you can pay me tomorrow, as opposed to like, well, pay me today and I'll do the job tomorrow. Welcome to another episode of the Matthews Mentality Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Matthews, and today we're thrilled to welcome Sean Henry, CEO of the Nashville Predators, the Preds. Very excited. Since 2010, Sean has led the organization to unprecedented success both on and off the ice. Under his leadership, Bridgestone Arena has been recognized as Arena of the Year by Polestar, and the Predators have been named the #1 professional sports franchise by ESPN. That's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
No reason to talk anymore after hearing that, right?
Well, I want to. What year was that?
Well, we're the reigning champs of the #1 sports franchise in the world. That was 2019. It was also the last year they gave it out.
Oh, so you're just going to hang on to this for forever.
Exactly.
I mean, they couldn't ever improve on what you guys had done, so they just stopped.
That is it. You know people at ESPN, obviously.
This is true. Sean's dedication to the Smashville community has been instrumental in spearheading initiatives that have raised millions for local causes, expanding the Predators' impact across Middle Tennessee. In this episode, we will explore Sean's leadership philosophy, the challenges he's navigated, and his vision for the future of the Preds organization. Welcome to the podcast, Sean.
Well, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Thank you for being here. Now, season started off a little slow, but we're on a 4-game heater right now.
We are. And, it's one of those odd seasons. 2 years ago, we made a big change in the organization. It was, it's time for us to maybe take a step back, to take a few forward, traded some of our fan favorites. We need to restock our cupboards, if you will, and get a little deeper with the plan of taking some big steps forward. And we said it was going to be hard. Could be painful even. And last year, we thought we'd play some real fun hockey. It's going to be good hockey. You're going to see some young guys and some leaders. And we made the playoffs. And I was like, what are you talking about? You guys are doom and gloom. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule. This year, we loaded up. We did something that I've never done before. I've never been part of an organization to bring in so many key veterans. And we brought in 2 40-goal scorers to match the one we had. Yeah. I don't know if that's ever been done before. The hottest D-man on the market we signed. We were going to go undefeated, is what the experts said. We knew it would take a while to gel. I mean,
that's what I was going to ask. Is it just trying to? We've seen this in all hockey. We've seen in basketball is a big one where I was out in LA and the Lakers had all these pieces and it just takes time.
It takes time, especially, if Steven Stamkos played with the Lightning for 15 years. Mark Sisso's, 7-8 years in Vegas, playing with similar guys the whole time. It's going to take a while for those guys to gel together. But right now, the hottest line in hockey, Forsberg, Marceau, and Stamkos. Things are starting to come along. We have a lot of road to make up, though. So we're having some fun right now and playing really well since the first year. A little bit of a hole,
but it is early, yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the hero of the game gets a shovel because, at the end of the game in the locker room. And so they acknowledge it. Look, we dug ourselves a hole. We're going to dig out of it. So we'll see what happens this year.
Yes, the last couple games there seems to be momentum building.
Yeah, and again, it's fun hockey. I mean, the other night we were losing 5-1 to San Jose. I'm just sitting in the stands like, oh my gosh, this is a tough one. Yeah. Hopefully we'll make it respectable. And then we come back, biggest comeback in team history. So it was a fun one.
Do you go to and or have to go to every game?
I get to go to every game. But it's so true. Like, I laugh when people ask me the question. If I didn't have to, I still would. My whole family's built around hockey. This is what we do. I'm fortunate. I get to sit in the stands. Not a suite. I go visit suites throughout.
Are you ever recognized in the stands?
Oh, when we're not playing well? Oh, sure. It's such a great place to be, though. I don't care what you do for a living. It's a welcoming place to be. So when we're not playing well, you'll get the normal, you suck at your job. Why are you here? You should be fired. What are you doing? You're not seeing this. For the most part, Nashvilleians are like, it's going to be all right, buddy. And I always get mad at that. It's like when you strike out, and someone's like, oh my gosh, that one cut was a pretty good one. I don't want sympathy.
Yeah, don't give me sympathy.
Don't yell at me in front of my daughter, though. That's rough.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I was going to ask, do you remember the first time someone recognized you and basically came at you?
That's a little aggressive. And people normally, we're Nashville, so we're polite. It's a negative comment in passing. You know, as you're walking away, once in a while, people have some valid things to say. You want to hear them.
Yeah.
And part of it is your fan. You do want to let people air it out. It's a rare day where you hear something you don't know already.
Yeah.
So you walk through it, you talk through it. It's normally really fun. There's only been one incident the whole time I've been here. My youngest daughter was pretty young at the time, where a guy was dropping some F-bombs, and I was like, all right.
Probably had too much to drink.
Yeah. Yell at me all you want, just not in front of my daughter.
No,
I'm still her dad. She brings it up still to this day. She'll remind me, hey, Dad, you suck.
Yeah. If you can make a joke out of it, that's good. I was going to say, I was smiling because, you probably walk by 10 people every game who wait to get on social media and their anon accounts and troll, but like they see their face like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, those people normally have like cartoon characters as their, picture. But again, our fans are awesome. I mean, they really, really are. I mean, our kids go to school with them, you go to church with them, play Little League with them, and they're your friends.
Now, you title CEO, how much does your job break down between what I'll define, and like, give me a better term here if there is one, like the operations, the business of the team, the revenue, the P&L, the expenses, the EBITDA, versus the side of the business? I think fans are more attuned to, like the salary cap and the signing and the trades, because I know from a general manager perspective, like how do those responsibilities fall for you?
So when I got here, we were a very siloed organization. You had the arena operations team, the business operations, hockey operations. I don't care where you are. When you have that, things are not going to be as good as they could be or should be. You want people in and out of each other. And we were fortunate. We had the best GM in hockey, and David Poyle, who has seen it differently, but for whatever reason, we're set up that way. So I was lucky to be able to come in here and work with a legend, a Hall of Famer like David Poyle, where he just embraced your input. And not that picking players at all, but you're a soundboard. If we do this, what does this mean? Can we hit this with the cap? Where should we be? And quite frankly, when I got here, we were probably closer to the floor of the cap, where, the past 8-9 years, we're managing the cap because we're at the very, very top of it. So you work really closely with that. At the same time, business operations better be doing their job to support what that is. And we continue to grow outside our walls. The arena operation is as important as anything else. It's the backbone of what you do, from the concert business to what kind of ice are the guys playing on, and what's the next renovation, what's the difference maker. So players want to be here, so they want to play here. At the same time, we spend a lot of time outside the building. We built the 3 Ford Ice Centers. We built a small arena in Montgomery County where Austin Peay plays. So you're trying to build a sports entertainment empire so you can funnel the most resources to the hockey team. So on any given day, you might be 75% in one of those areas and a little less on the others. But everything's cyclical. Come towards the end of your regular season, going into the playoffs, you're getting ready for the draft, free agency type. And you ride that out. At the same time, summertime, you're doing your renovations in the building, booking most of the concerts at that time of year. So it just flows in and out. And again, you're bringing a guy like Barry Trotz, and every day is grad school for Hockey 101. So you just sit with him. And Barry and I probably meet or talk on the phone 5, 6, 7 times a day. No standing meetings. We're both the same age, so we find ourselves in the restroom all the same time throughout the day. But he's in my office, 2 or 3 times a day. I'm in his 2 or 3 times a day. All of our offices flowing in and out of each other because we're one organization. There's no separation.
Yeah, no doubt. Similar approach here, but let me ask some technical business questions. Now, you guys aren't a publicly traded company that I'm aware of, but
we're not. No.
But
we
love
our financial secrets.
That's what I was going to say. Some of these questions you may or may not be able or willing to answer. So the pure economics of a sports franchise, I think I'll speak for myself. I think I speak for lots of people. Are fascinating because the valuations are truly incredible across all sports, right? And how much they've gone up. There's no American royalty, but owners of franchises as close as it gets. And so what is an annual revenue either for the Predators or on average for a hockey team?
So we're all in. We look at everything as one, whether it's, our food and beverage operation, our arena operation. Again, the Ford Ice Centers operate at a small loss as they should. It's about growing the game. But our total revenues with concerts and everything, it's $400 to $450 million. So much of that money goes right out the door, to the performers and that sort of thing. When we look at our numbers, though, we want our fans thinking about the numbers on jerseys. We want our fans thinking about the next game, where the leaders are, what are the standings, what's next. And I think that was a big accomplishment. When I got here, the team was struggling.
This was 2010.
Financially.
We're going to spend some time on that journey, but yeah.
Right. So, but back then it was, if we didn't hit 14,000 a game attendance wise, there was some trigger in the lease that could cause the team to leave. So that was the number everyone kept throwing at me. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. The only number I care about is 17,159. We're going to sell out every game. And people laughed. But to me, that's what it's about. When you start looking at numbers for us, it's let's run a responsible business. So we don't have, cash calls all the time. Let's have the business support the best possible hockey team. And that means let's continue to invest in where we are. We have 400 employees now. It's 4 times what we used to have.
That's a big organization.
You got to grow the revenue to make sure you can keep up with the biggest cities in the country. And we're not keeping up with them anymore. We're outpacing them.
And so if I heard you correctly, push back if I misunderstood. So 400 to 450 million in revenue, but generally, is it safe to say most sports teams, and maybe you just speak for hockey, don't necessarily have a huge operating profit? Is that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there aren't too many P&Ls in sports where you look at it and say, oh my gosh, I better invest in that.
Oh, what a cash flow.
Yeah.
That's where I'm getting at is ultimately getting to a valuation of a hockey franchise. What is the couple $1 billion?
Yeah, and it's growing all the time. Like
that's where I'm going with this is to help the audience understand, imagine there's a business, the revenue's growing, it's great, and especially as you do new TV deals, but the actual net income, the EBITDA isn't really there, but yet the valuations keep growing.
It's an unnatural balance, valuation to EBITDA. I mean, it truly is. Same time, I've never worked for an owner that he was looking at the P&L every day. It has to be this or this. Conversely, I never worked for an owner that looked at, oh my gosh, if I buy it for X, it's going to be worth Y. I've always worked for guys that own the team because they love the community and the sport.
Interesting.
And to me, that's the magic connection. There are teams that look at the P&L daily, or where could we be someday? You don't want that. You want an owner that's dedicated to the community, because when you connect it all, it's a special place to be as a fan, player, or employee.
Yeah, that's you touched on it. Is I had heard, I'm not an owner. I'd heard that nobody's buying, whether it's football, baseball, hockey. Not an owner yet, Zach. All right. Post liquidity event, God willing, yeah. I'm gonna buy the Cleveland Browns, make them great again. But it's oh shit, where was I?
We're talking about owning teams.
Yeah, so owning teams. It's helping the audience and fans understand. It's imagine these valuations keep growing, and yet even though it's a business, they're not being valued the way a traditional business is. What's the
X multiple?
Yeah, exactly. What's the EBITDA multiple? What's the revenue multiple? Okay, fine. And so, but you there's a saying kind of you never buy a sports franchise, as an investment, right? It's almost a labor of love. And you really shouldn't buy it with the assumption of appreciation, though that obviously is what has happened. And I don't want to take this conversation too much into kind of a right turn here, but I recently heard, and maybe this was just the NFL, that they're going to allow private equity to buy up to 10%. And I was like, okay, well, private equity, it's not about the community. It's not about, and maybe there's still some vanity project there, but it's about a return. And I think that might change things. Are you seeing any of that in hockey?
Well, I'm not sure what league went first. It might have been the NBA, maybe Major League Baseball. Okay. I forget which one. And it's when valuations started going north of $1 billion. Yeah. And, so I think each league allows a different, level. We have some in our league a year or 2, 3 years ago, can buy up to X, roughly 20%. I'm probably off a little bit. Could that change if they owned 100%? Absolutely. It just would. But I think that's why most leagues have capped it at,
because it keeps them from control.
Right. But it does allow really good owners to enjoy some liquidity out of where they've been, especially owners that might have owned for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. In the NFL especially, there are so many families that built their wealth through owning the team. Original owners, Bears, Raiders, Bengals. So I think it was an ability to keep that historic, family in place. For our own, it's, as we're looking at, we're going to put $1 billion in our building. We're not bringing that money in. But maybe for some owners, it's important regardless of sport.
Interesting.
So
where were you born?
West Islip, New York, Long Island.
So you grew up Long Island?
All Long Island. I was blessed to be a Ranger fan, a Giant fan, a Yankee fan. I was a Nets fan until they left Long Island. And my dad told me I couldn't be a Nets fan
Into
anymore.
New Jersey.
And then the Giants left. And I was like, well, I'm a Giant fan, Dad. I'm not changing that. He was a Jet fan, oddly enough. But yeah, sports were everything in our family.
Were they?
Yeah.
And is that a natural kind of lead into how you got into sports? Was just a sports nut?
I was a sports nut, like, most people we all knew or grew up with. And, you played every sport, maybe not as well as some, but you followed the seasons, right? You played baseball, you played hockey, you played lacrosse, soccer, basketball, everything in between. And you loved your teams fiercely. And in New York, you're fortunate to have 2 teams in each league.
Mm-hmm.
And the team you hated the most was the second team in the city because your best friend liked the Mets or whomever. Yeah. And those are fun rivalries. But for me, I love sports. Never thought there was a job in sports. I just hoped I'd play for the Yankees, and that never happened. And then you realize, wait a minute, there are jobs in sports, which I just didn't know. And no one knows that.
How did you find out about it?
I was really lucky. I grew up, I got a job when I was 14 years old as a busboy at a state park. That company happened to do food and beverage for sports teams around the country. I didn't know that. I was working at the beach. There's nothing better than going to be a busboy at the beach and, you hang out on the beach before or after work.
Sure.
And I worked there all through junior high and high school and college. My last year of school, they paid for. I was paying for my own school if I stayed on for a year. I was not going to stay on forever to sell hot dogs or cook hot dogs. What I didn't realize is the opportunity. Once you're in sports, no matter what department you're in, you have an opportunity to make it, what you are. And I'm so grateful to that company because they built a training program for me. I was going to go to Detroit for 3 months with the Pistons, then Truman Sports Complex in Kansas City, the Metrodome in Minnesota, and then back to Yankee Stadium, the birthplace of sports.
Oh, you can keep going.
And I got to Detroit and I never left.
That's what I was going to ask. So you went. We talked briefly before we jumped on here, and you started in Detroit, and
I was a management trainee for the food and beverage company. We were a subcontractor to the Pistons.
So was it one of those they just saw how you worked or how you executed, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come work for us?"
It's pretty much it. I was really, really fortunate that the CFO of the Pistons, Ron Campbell, and CEO Tom Wilson, those 2 guys invented our industry. Truly, the Pistons were the first organization to combine running a venue, booking the concerts, running a sports team. And then if you do it well, what else should you do? And again, I was a trainee. They shouldn't have not have known my name. I was there 3 months. And they were the type of guys that, and if you understand this, it works. If you do your job really well, you're given the chance to do a little bit more. And it didn't matter what avenue it was in. And for me, they bought an amphitheater that as soon as I got there, and they were looking at someone to help oversee the renovations. I was 21 years old. I didn't know what color blueprints were. And I said, I'll do it. And they laughed. And I remember I'd call my boss, actually the president of the company, who was always like my godfather in the industry, to tell him what I just did. And he said, that's great. And he said, you're not leaving. I said, oh, yes, I am. In 3 months, I'm done here. I'm going to go to Kansas City. He said, no, you're staying till the renovations are up. So this was in October. I had to live in Detroit through a winter. I cried like a baby. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because the Pistons allowed me, even though I still work for the food and beverage company, to get really involved in renovations, to get really involved in the marketing department, we took over the accounting and the cash flow for the box office, settling concerts, the parking lots, just because if there was a need, we said yes. And again, my boss was tremendous, probably one of the smartest, hardest working guys I've ever been around. He let you a lot of rope. I ended up replacing him about a year later as he got promoted. And again, my company allowed me to get into the facility design management side of the company, the sales side of the company. So while I was still in Detroit, I was pitching, new accounts throughout the industry. And that's where I met the Rams, got promoted, and we moved them from LA to St. Louis. But I was still with my company. We finished building their stadium, with them and for them, did a lot of other things for them as well, booked shows, sold some sponsorships for them, suites, designed their sales and marketing side of things. And right about that same time, the Pistons wanted to buy the Tampa Bay Lightning. They reached back out to me to join them. So that's when I jumped over officially.
Okay, so you were at that company, but primarily effectively dedicated to the Pistons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when they said, no, you're not leaving, you're focusing on this, again, you're still employed.
I was still, yeah.
And then also with the Rams?
And then the Rams, very similar. Now, the difference between the Pistons and the Rams, back then at least, this was pre-Stan Kroenke, the Pistons saw everything that they touched. Every fan that came through the building, every sponsor, every suite holder, as them as one group long before data management. It was just what you should do. Everyone should be dedicated to great services. I brought that mentality to the Rams, and the Rams at the time, very different than now. Well, we just want to play 10 football games a year in our building. we bring them investment opportunity. We could buy this parking garage. We could do this. And they're like, well, why would we do that? Like, because you can. I mean, you moved to St. Louis for all these new rights. It was very frustrating for me.
Was it Georgia Fontier? Was that
who was a really colorful, nice lady.
Yeah.
Our oldest son was born 2 days after we opened the building. So you can imagine I was working a lot leading into that. And you would have thought it was her grandson being born. I mean, she had a real personal interest in everyone. Yeah. But being a tenant in the building for her entire tenure, I don't even think they realized what could be on the other side. There were some really good people in the organization that they ended up doing some pretty cool things. And obviously, won a Super Bowl and created some fun memories for St. Louis.
Yeah.
So
greatest show on turf. You said something earlier. You're 21, and I think you said the CFO, Ron Campbell, and it was CEO, Tom Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't have known who you are,
No.
but they did. And I'm going to take a leap here and say part of that, probably a majority of the reason they knew who you are was because they saw something about you, whether it was your work ethic, your execution, your personality, whatever. Why do you think you stood out to them? And I love you're so good. You're run for office. Like you're gonna defer. It's because of Ron. It's because of Tom. But we need to talk about you. And like, what do you think you did? Because we have a lot of listeners, and some are very accomplished. A lot of them are growing in their career, and their career could be in sports, it could be in real estate, and anything in between. And they're trying to find how do they shine to where they get the promotions or they get the opportunities. Like, what did you do that you think really allowed you to stand out?
Well, again, it's hard not to give those guys credit because they really did take a big interest in people that were showing their best. And that's the key. They just want to run around the building to, I don't care what organization you're in, a third of the people are incredible. A third are okay. And then there's a middle that really don't care. They always concentrate on the higher performers, the guys that cared, no matter what the position was. And for me, I grew up, my parents instilled a great work ethic in me. All of us, I'm the youngest of 6. I have 5 great role models of my siblings, 4 sisters and a brother. My parents are 2 of the smartest people I've ever been around in my life. They did not go to college. It just was not, the way it was going to be, for them growing up. But hard work was everything. Giving back to others was everything. And I worked for my dad on the side my entire life. He was a carpenter. And, there was a right way to work. There was a wrong way to work. And you just learned early on, when you do things the right way, people respond better. And life's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more fun. So for me, once I got in the door of the Pistons, and this is the team that just won their back-to-back championships.
The bad boys.
And I hated the bad boys before I got there.
Until you got
and then
there.
You fall in love with them. And you realize, my gosh, I'm working in sports. Now, again, we're a food and beverage company. And I couldn't do enough. If there was an opportunity, I just volunteered for it. I would, Chuck Daly, incredible coach.
Sure.
He would do these business talks on Saturday mornings right before practice. One of the most accomplished NBA coaches ever was still selling tickets for the Pistons, doing these chalk talks at 8 a.m. I would volunteer to go in, make sure they had coffee, but open the doors. They didn't have to bring salespeople in for it because I just want to be around guys like that. And the more you do that, people will give you a little bit more to do. And again, the wrong people hear that and they think, well, are they going to pay you more? I've always said to people, don't ask what your title is. Don't even ask how much more money you're going to make. Just do it. And once you do it, life gets pretty easy.
Yeah. The responsibility, the execution, the performance, like the money tends to correlate over time.
It
and then
always
the titles
does. Without a doubt, it always does. Maybe not exactly when you want it.
Yeah. And there's exceptions every rule, but as a program, if you run it kind of as a program, if you outwork everybody, if you outperform everyone, if you're constantly like, hey, I'll do that, I'll do that,
Right.
I'll do that, without saying, it's there's a philosophy, and let me know what your thoughts are. It's like, you love the people who are like, I'll do the job today and you can pay me tomorrow, as opposed to like, well, pay me today and I'll do the job tomorrow. I think there's a cartoon character, Wimpy.
Yeah. Gladly paid Tuesday for a burger today,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And nobody liked Wimpy, It's like that philosophy. It sounds like the answer to my question is like, hey, why did they know your name? It's because of your work ethic and kind of how you went about it. It's like, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. You just,
and the answer is always yes.
I'll do that if you pay me more. No, it's like, I'll do it. And you trusted that the rest would figure itself out.
And, you never did it for the next job either. That's why I have a lot of friends or, younger colleagues you'll talk to. And they're like, what's next for me? I'm like, I don't know, but why predestine yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just do a great job. At the end of the day, go home, look left, look right. Did you outwork everyone? Like, did you do more than yesterday? And what I mean, not just production. Were you better, today than yesterday? And if you do that, the sky's the limit, and you're going to enjoy your career. You just will.
I ask this question almost every guest is the concept of work-life balance is, you're 21, 22, you're away from your family. So again, your personal life, maybe you're dating someone or not, but what did or did not your work-life balance look like? Was there such a thing? I know it's more of a new it's a new word in the lexicon of workers. Our generation probably.
Yeah, it didn't exist when I started there. But again, the guy I worked for, Joe Ambrose, he was the hardest working human I've ever met. Maybe too much so. But we were in the office every morning at 8. And some nights I was getting out at 2 in the morning. You close out after a concert, it got late. It didn't matter. You were in the office the next morning at 8. Even when there was nothing to do, maybe that was a little rough, but I had no money. I wasn't making any money. And the more I was in that building, the more I ate for free. So that was, so it was selfish too. But strangely enough, some of my best friends in the world I met that first month in Detroit, talk to them every day. One of them works with me, or two of them work with me at the Preds now. But that was your work life, social life was work. I mean, we had a bowling league, golf league, softball league. I met my wife. She worked for the Pistons at the bowling league. That was our first date. So you're just there all the time.
Wait, how long did you guys date before you had to tell HR?
Well, it's funny. I remember going to my boss saying, hey, she actually worked for our company.
Right.
And I said, she's going to leave and go work for the Pistons in accounting. And to this, unfortunately, my mentor, the CEO of the company, passed away recently. But every time I talk to him, he's like, we let the wrong one go away. We should have made you quit, not her. Because she's better than me. There's no doubt about that.
For sure.
So it was about 5-6 months in.
That's very cool. Working the long
6 months
hours.
longer than you'd have to do today.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to circle back. You had touched on your parents, and it was kind of within the answer to the question, like, why did you shine? It's like, hey, I was working really hard and I was volunteering for jobs, like whatever it takes. Like I was ready to do it. Why did you do it? You proactively preempted this question of like, well, it was what my parents taught me to do is work ethic and quality of work is kind of what I heard there. So we always dive into like, what, not why are you successful or why are you this way? That led you to the behavior actions that led to the success you've had as a CEO of a big organization, a National Hockey League team. And it, in this, some people say, hey, it's nature. I was always wired this way. If I heard you say it's like there's some nurture there, and was it your dad sat you down and said, this is how you do it, this is what we do? Was it just by watching him? What was that dynamic like as a kid? A
lot of it's watching. It's osmosis. And again, my parents, my dad passed away about 10 years ago, but both my parents, this is what you did. When you volunteered for Habitat or the church or the school, you showed up before someone thought you should be. You'd leave after, people thought you were going to leave. Again, because that's how you're judged. You just be a good person. I know it sounds corny, but the golden rule really is the golden rule. But I remember I was working for my dad. I was probably 13 years old. We were doing some molding trim work in a restaurant when they were closed. And it was the dirtiest restaurant I've ever been in my life. It was filthy. I mean, there was food everywhere. And I was excited to be in a restaurant when it was closed. It was a pretty neat thing. And I saw a cooler full of brownies. I'm like, all right, come out eating one. I thought my dad was going to kill me. Like, he was the most wonderful man on the planet.
He said you stole that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so we got done and it looked really good. He said, go grab that vacuum in the back. And I said, all right, why? He said, look at this dining room. It's awful. It was carpeted at the time. And I remember we wiped down every single table. We vacuumed everything. We mopped the kitchen. And the whole time I was like, because of a brownie? My gosh. And on the way home, I said, why did we do all that? He said, when they come in tomorrow, they're going to see the place is clean. It's going to make our work look better. So it might have been a selfish thing, if you will. Like you want to shine and make things look better. But the whole thing was if you leave things better, than when you got there, that company's probably going to use you again. They're going to think more highly of you.
More opportunities will be created.
Yeah, it's just that simple. And like you said, they're paying you to do something, make them look better. And I remember, years later, the GM of that restaurant's nephew works for us today.
Very cool. Yeah,
and he
world.
would bring that up. He said, I'll never forget. We had a party in the restaurant. We left it dirty. We came back and we didn't know who cleaned it. He said it was years later before we realized it was you guys. So they didn't even know, but they knew it was
you
clean.
guys knew.
Yeah. And the others, when you're a part-time employee, if you do a good job, you get more hours. Yeah. So again, everything might sound a little selfish, but I knew if I worked a little bit better than the busboy next to me, when it rained, the beach was still going to bring me in. and I needed money to pay for college.
I'll show you a similar story about my dad. We go to church every Sunday, and on the way back from Sunday school to church, our little thing was we stop at 7-Eleven. You get an icy, a Slurpee, right? And so try not to judge me too much. Let's say I'm 12 years old and I fill it up with all the colors, and I would try and drink as much of it as possible before we left so I could refill it on the way out. Yep. And I did this 2 or 3 times, and then my dad's like, "Hey, that's stealing." I go, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm totally confused. Like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're stealing." I said, "What do you mean? I'm not stealing." He's like, "You're paying for a cup. It wasn't refills." He's like, "You're drinking half and refilling." He's like, "You're stealing the Slurpee." He's like, "Don't do that."
And that's
and at the time I was like, "Oh, come on, Dad." But like, I was just like, and he wasn't, my dad was not like a hard ass. Like, right. He was a very principled guy. And
same. And 30 years later, you remember it like it was yesterday.
Oh, I remember,
right?
and I use it with my kids.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, like, that's stealing. Don't do that." And then they think I'm crazy. And then I just blame my dad. I said, "My dad said this to me."
Well, let's face it. If you have good parents, you won. I mean, life is easier when you do. And obviously it sounds like you did. And I mean, I hit the lottery. Really did.
So you credit a lot your parents now. Was there some nature too, where you just, if I asked your friends and family, like, would they say, "Oh, we always knew Sean was going to be running something big, sports related, maybe"?
My sisters would say yes. You know, my youngest sister's 5 years older than I am. They're all a year apart.
You're
I'm the baby. Yeah. They wanted me that much. I got new furniture and everything.
Oh, you
no hand-me-downs.
I got 4. My youngest is 4 years younger than the rest, and like he's got the best life. His feet never touched the floor.
Oh, same. I was so like, we didn't have a whole lot, but I was spoiled.
Yeah, spoiled with affection, if nothing else. Right.
So so my sisters would tell they kind of always knew. I think they're being polite.
That's what sisters do.
They were all good in school.
Support unconditionally.
Yeah, I got through school. They shined.
Yeah.
My brother, who's the oldest, he would probably be a little less kind. Like, "Yeah, we were worried about you." But looking back on it now, it's easy for your friends to say, "Oh yeah, we always knew," because I really did work more than most of my friends growing up. Again, just if I wanted to go to college, that's how it was going to come about. But I think some people would lie today to say, "Oh, sure, we always knew life would be okay for you." But it's been fun. So I'm not really sure.
It sounds like you had a lot of how you define big breaks, but it sounds like from an executive level, the first big opportunity was with the Lightning.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's when it was
C-level.
We're in Detroit. Yeah. Yep, I became the COO. And we were the worst team in sports, and we took that title from the Bucks. I mean, we were not Tampa Bay back then, and the Rays took it from us. And so the goal was, let's repeat what we did in Detroit. Mr. Davidson was our owner, probably one of the best owners in the history of sports. And the goal there was to turn it around, do something special, but most importantly, let's leave a really good footprint and make sure his name grows and doesn't get embarrassed. And we did turn it around. So did the Bucks. They won the Super Bowl 3 or 4 years later. We won the Stanley Cup 13 months after they won the Super Bowl. And we did it together. And that was the neat thing. Cool. Our players were at their games. Our players were in their Super Bowl parade. Theirs were, in our Stanley Cup parade. But that's where we were given the latitude from Detroit to say, look, it's a non-traditional market. There are 0 fans. I mean, there are 4,000 season ticket holders. Try everything. Have some fun. And that's where my philosophy today is never said no to an idea from an employee ever. But if it's your idea, don't make it a dressed up complaint. You got to show what you want to do, why you want to do it, how it's going to happen, whether it's your area or somewhere else. And with that permission to do anything, and we changed our industry. And we built the first all-inclusive club that every stadium has now. We built into Tampa because we couldn't sell a ticket. But we knew we could sell beer and good food. So basically our pitch was, come to this great club, eat really well, and you'll see a hockey game.
And by the way, there's a hockey game going on.
And as we were doing that, the team got better and better each year. It's the best spectator sport to watch. And once you start putting good things together, some great things will happen. We did so many unique things that, we failed miserably at so many of them. But our whole mantra was, let's just, figure out what we did wrong and improve upon it.
What was the biggest challenges you faced? And I'll ask this 2 questions. One, from a mental aspect of stepping into this role, like what was the hardest thing for you to overcome? And then what was an actual problem, a business problem, like a very practical business problem, and how'd you take that?
I think the biggest misunderstanding I had looking at it and the challenge, we never appreciated what we were stepping into when we bought Tampa. And we were the 3rd owner in 3 years. I mean, you think about that, right? So 3rd owner in 3 years. What every staff member heard up at that point, every September was, We're going to do this. We're going to be great. You got to do this, blah, 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 blah. So we walked in. We're the Detroit Pistons. I mean, again, we invented the industry. We just thought we'd walk in and people would look at us and say, oh my gosh, take us to the promised land. It was not that case at all. Great. I mean, great people, but they were burned out to a point where not out of overwork, out of over promising where we're going to go. And it was a good hit in the head to say, all right, let's step back. Let's bring everyone in. What do you need? What do you need to do your job better? What do you need for us to take a step forward? And it was everything from what the locker room looked like to what our sales programs were to where we could go. But I will, to this day, whenever I step into a newer situation, you better appreciate what's happened before you got there so you can make sure you put everyone on the proper footing. I think that's really the lesson I learned. And the second question was the hard one, I think. What was it again?
Well, you were saying, like, I think there's a saying like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes in kind of like, just to touch on what you said, like, hey, if something's happened before, you might want to investigate it. The two-part question was like, first was, from kind of just within you, the mental side, and I'll lead you here. Some people was like, it was really hard because I had imposter syndrome or I had doubts about my ability to execute, or I wasn't qualified, or, just because that's a big jump and you're C-level at, relatively a young age. And I know the audience, generally speaking, the challenges they face in their careers and professions, there's always like the technical challenges of the industry or of the job. But I think the bigger challenges for most people, I speak for myself as well, is really the mental challenges.
I was going to say, it's between your ears, and it was for me too. And you touched on it a little bit. I came from the food and beverage side, and I was coming back to an organization that I just loved, and they gave me so many opportunities. But am I up for this? Like, am I up for this challenge? Being on the team side, leading sales and marketing, leading arena operations, working more closely with the GM and that side of things. And every successful person I know, define success any way you want, there's a little insecurity within them. And I think it drives you a little bit more. For me, it most definitely did. But when I remember we made the playoffs, shockingly to some, and we won the first round, first time ever in franchise history.
What year was this?
It was 2003.
Okay.
And then we lost to the Devils, who went on to win the Stanley Cup. And it was that year that it was like, all right, can we take this step forward? Or is this it? Like, have we just achieved all you can achieve with the Lightning? And that was the hardest gut check. And I remember sitting, Ron Campbell, the CFO in Detroit, was our president in Tampa. So he and I have always kind of been linked together. Bill Wickett, our CMO here, was our vice president PR in Tampa, also came from Detroit. But I remember sitting, three of us, and Jay Feast, our GM, we said, okay, what's next? Like, how do we jump forward from here? And I think all of us had some insecurity of, can we do it? And then John Tortorella was our head coach, and it wasn't a choice of can we do it. It was, that's what we're doing, and this is what we need to do. And it was something to hear. I mean, it really was. And Dave Andreychuk was our captain. And we had a lot of young studs on that team. Marty St. Louis, Hall of Famer. Brad Richards should be in the Hall of Fame. Vinny Cavier should be in the Hall of Fame. Dan Boyle, a superstar defenseman. Everyone kind of bought into what was the next step. From our ice technician, how do we make better ice in Florida? We didn't know. Like, we really didn't.
You're not talking about the ice you put in like your soda. You're talking about the ice.
The playing surface. What do we need to do? And I don't want to speak for all those guys, but there was a little fear of, can we take the next step? And I think that insecurity kind of drove all of us together. And it really was. We always look at that group as we were kind of one. And it wasn't, despite Detroit. I mean, we were a stepchild. I loved the whole empire. I loved everything together. But the next year we won the Stanley Cup. 7 days later, we won the NBA championship. 2 months later, we won the WNBA championship. And a year earlier, we won the AFL championship.
Nice
so we won 4 championships together. But in Tampa, it was still, can we do it? And are we the right guys to do it? And it turned out we were.
Yeah, unfortunately, you beat my Kobe Shaq Lakers, in 5.
That was Detroit. That was the other championship. But that was something, though. It was a very similar team, though, in reality, because they were not the favorite by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they weren't at all, but they just beat them up.
It was a team.
It
really was, yeah.
I'll blame it on injuries, but whatever. So, look, winning a Stanley Cup, having your name engraved on that trophy, that had to be very validating, right?
It was incredible. Bill Wickett, our CMO here, he and I were in Ron Campbell's office, and we were going over the names on the cup. And what's your name going to be, Ron? You know, everyone called him Ron, and I hope he's listening to this. He got fancy and put Ronald J. Campbell. Tom Wilson put Thomas Wilson. Bill Davidson, our owner, just an incredible name. William Davidson. I remember looking at Bill thinking, like, what's wrong with these guys? They're Ron, Bill, Tom. And I'll never forget, you know, we were on a speakerphone. They said, Sean, what would your name be? And I thought, this is a cruel joke. I mean, my name's not going to the Stanley Cup. Besides, it's Sean, or, oh, it's Sean.
Yeah.
And then they asked Bill the same thing. And I remember looking at Bill thinking, why are they doing this? This is just a cruel thing. And I'll never forget Tom Wilson said, so it's Sean and Bill then, right? And we're like, yeah. And we left the room. And he said, why'd they say that? I was like, I don't know. And then we realized, wait a minute, our name's going on the Stanley Cup. Like, it was a surprise. We were hopeful, but you didn't know. So yeah, when that goes on there, it's pretty cool.
Who was your first call?
My dad. Yeah. Right away. And I mean, he was just beyond excited. Our Stanley Cup party, our day of the cup was just an incredible day. I mean, it really was. But, you know, I had uncles there. I'm the youngest grandchild.
Come down
too.
To the party?
Oh, it was everyone did. Yeah. I mean, friends I haven't seen in
the whole Henry
years
family.
And years. Yeah, it was
Long Island
a big
invaded.
One. Yeah, all of our employees. I mean, the one thing that I always learned from Ron Campbell was when you're celebrating, celebrate. You know, bring everyone. Everyone's a friend. Have some fun with it, because there'll be some days where you're not, you know, celebrating. Yeah, that was something. It really was.
Did your dad? He was around long enough to see you become the CEO of the Preds.
Yeah. So the day I was named, I had a chance to call him, and that same day I flew to New York. It's kind of, we all did, and he passed away that night. But yeah, he did hear about it.
Hold on. So that happened within 24 hours?
Yeah. So well, maybe 2 days before. You know, but you're right in that same window. And my dad was so proud of all of us. Yeah. I mean, like, all my family, they've all done great things. You know, one sister's superintendent of schools, one just retired as a principal, one was a biomedical engineer that became a school librarian to marry her schedule with my nieces and nephews. Another sister was a financial whiz. She's a nun now. My brother owned his own company. They all did really well. They were smart. They all have masters and PhDs. You know, I limped along, got a bachelor's after 5 years.
You're just a hockey guy.
Yeah, right. And that's how they say it too. But no, my parents they're proud of all of us. But yeah, it's neat to be able to share that with your family.
So you had about a decade in Tampa. You guys won the cup. What ultimately led to your decision to, you know, after 10 years to kind of do something different?
Yeah. So our owner, Mr. Davidson, he passed away, and ended up selling everything. You know, or his family did. You know, the Pistons, us. We owned a minor league baseball team as well. A few amphitheaters. You know, a pretty big sports empire. And the new owners of Lightning, you know, I was working with. I resigned actually and was consulting with them, and they didn't run it all that well, and then ended up having to resell it. You know, after 18 months. So I helped broker that sale to Jeff Vinnick, who owns it now. And I was doing some consulting for some other teams. Life was pretty good. You know, our youngest was 2 or 3 years old.
In Tampa?
We're living in Tampa, outside of Clearwater.
Not a bad spot.
The water's right on top of you.
Not a bad spot.
You know, so
unless there's a hurricane.
Right. And then you still bug out. It's not bad. But, you know, you were in shorts every day. I was coaching every one of my kids, you know, sports, driving them to school, picking them up, and still making, you know, decent money. And what I didn't realize, we were on vacation, and I got a call to interview for this job, the Predators job. And they were going through a similar thing that we went through just, you know, 10, 12 years earlier. And I turned down the opportunity to interview. And I hung up the phone. We're on vacation with all of our friends.
Hard to get.
Well, and I told them, I was like, come on, what's wrong? And they all stopped and stared at me. And about 2 hours later, I swear they had an intervention, you know, like, and they said, you need to go interview for that job. Number one, it's a great market. Number two, you describe that ownership group as, you know, they're committed.
Yeah.
Number three, you're miserable not working for a team. And I thought they were nuts. I really did, until I came up here. And that was the first job interview in my entire life. You know,
how'd you prep?
I didn't know. Like, I was
you wear a suit and tie to a hockey CEO interview?
I was on vacation. So I had my neighbor overnight a suit up to the Marriott by the airport. Geez. And got up here, and I was wearing flip-flops, and they forgot to put shoes in there. So like, what do? Do you wear flip-flops with your suit and show them who you are? I stopped at the mall and got shoes.
I was going to say, I think, you know, respectfully, you probably should get some shoes.
But I'll tell you, when Tom Segrin, my first interview was with Tom and his son, Chris, when he described what he wanted, and it reminded me so much of what our mantra was in Detroit and Tampa. And it was just be the best. Let's win. Let's do it the right way. Let's be great community partners. And that's what Tom was saying. And I literally got up. I said, I'm in. I'll take it. And I'll never forget Tom and his son Chris exchanged an odd look.
Didn't even tell you what you got paid?
Well, no, worse than that. They said, we didn't offer it to you. I said, oh, like, what do you mean? I said, well, we have a few other candidates.
Well, it's a strategy.
Yeah.
It's like the Jedi,
right.
You will hire
But
me.
I did. I wanted to work there so badly after hearing what their
That's
vision
cool.
was. And then I got a chance to meet the rest of the ownership group who were so dedicated to Nashville. If I didn't get this job, I would have died. And I really was so excited about all they wanted to do was replicate kind of what we did in Tampa, non-traditional market. Let's lead the league in this and this. Let's change the way we celebrate what we do.
Tourist destination. Nashville more so than Tampa. Tampa's not a city that you'd hate to go to.
Right. But similar.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of people, especially spring training. You have so many Canadians and Midwesterns and New Yorkers come down
Great point.
to see their games. And not a lot of people are from Tampa that live there.
Same
So
in
their
Nashville,
affinities for another team first.
Was that part of why they ultimately, or part of, in your humble opinion, and maybe this has been communicated?
Well, it's not that humble.
Yeah. Why they hired you? Like, cause you had kind of a similar, it's not a turnaround story, but like you had to battle the similar challenges in a market like Tampa, like Nashville.
Yeah, I assume there was an allure of, look, you worked in a non-traditional market, a secondary market, a newer
You
market.
didn't necessarily have this built-in fan base the way you would with the Blackhawks
Right.
or the Red Wings.
And yeah, like you work for the Rangers, and I like the guys there to do a great job. But life's a little bit easier when you have 20 million people
Yes.
within 5 miles
bit.
of you. Yeah, when you have 200 Fortune 500 companies, on your doorstep.
Yeah, the Rangers.
So for us, or for that group, I think that was part of it. You'd have to ask them. I made the mistake of asking Tom, what was the interview like? He said, it was one of the worst interviews I ever had in my life.
Said you were so cheap.
That's probably is. I don't even know. But I'll tell you what, I am grateful, to that group and Tom especially for, giving me a chance.
You married? How many kids you have at the time?
We had 4 at the time. 4 at the time. Our oldest was a freshman in high school. Was about to start.
That's what I was going to ask. How was that?
His life was pretty good. Played a lot of sports. Was popular, president of the school. And we asked him, if you don't want to do this, we won't do it. It's just that simple. And I'll never forget. He said, let's do it. It'll be fun. And he said, I'll never be, captain of the team, never be president of the school, blah, 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 blah. And our younger son was in 5th grade and our daughter was in 1st grade and then a 3-year-old. And the amazing thing about Nashville, everyone's welcome here. And you get to become what you want to become.
Community.
He became captain of the team, president of the school, all those
Where do
good
you go
things.
to high school?
Well, we'll get your kids to transfer. They are Father Ryan family.
Yeah.
So, we beat you this year in football, which is big. First time in 30
in
years.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So,
I helped coach the 8th grade and, God willing, we'll coach the 9th grade.
Well, we got room for you over at Father Ryan. Norwood's not far away. It's closer to your house.
Listen, I know a lot of your people. They have been talking to me, and it's an awesome school.
They all are, though. Like, what I love about
great.
Nashville, one of our oldest daughter went to Franklin High School. I've never met anyone that goes to school here that relocates that's not happy. I don't care what school you go to. And we talked about different ones for each one of us. But again, Nashville's so welcoming. It became home for my son. They just had their first baby, second on the way. I actually coaches Father Ryan's hockey team,
That's
as a
awesome.
volunteer basis. Our younger son, he thrived here as well, was captain of the hockey team as well. Our daughter's done really well. Our youngest is senior now, and just thriving. I mean, it's just such a great place to come.
My wife told me their soccer coach had just put a message to my 5th grader who's deciding on schools, and they're wonderful. BA, not to get down a rabbit hole, like it's single ed, Montgomery Bell single ed. This is for our oldest Brody, and I went to a public school in Los Angeles. Like, you talk about distractions, and this is on me because my wife's Catholic and she loves Father Ryan. I said, listen, like,
I'll talk to her.
I said when you're a boy and you're going through puberty and hormones, I said, eliminating, the opposite sex in the classroom, I feel like it would go a long way to helping him concentrate. Like this, I swear to God, this was like my wife's gonna kill me for saying this. Like, I was just like, like when you're in high school, you just concentrate is hard enough. And then you have all the, you have these girls, at least for me, girls around you in the class. And I said, I feel like a single ed would be better. I said, this was my experience. So, and we've been so happy with the experience, but no, Father Ryan's great. And Brentwood Academy and Montgomery Bell, they're all, the schools are amazing. You're right. Nobody hates school. The only transferring I see Within schools is all sports related, like
Right.
football.
Yes.
And I think that's happening everywhere around the country. That's not really, our game, but yeah, it's like the transferring of school is more of like a sports related posturing.
and not because someone's unhappy.
No,
which is
I
so
haven't,
great.
I haven't
Yeah.
heard that at all.
And we go to the same elementary school or did, and it's just a fun, vibrant place.
So you move, your oldest is in 8th, 9th grade. Talk to me about your wife. Is she's supportive in your role?
Oh my
and
gosh,
job
I don't understand. Why she is supportive. When we moved to St. Louis, she was.
Must be a big hockey fan then, right?
She's a huge hockey fan.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, she's also a Lions fan. But
tough.
she's from Detroit, and when we got offered the opportunity in St. Louis, she was 15, 16 months pregnant, and we're like, yeah, we'll go. Let's do it. We didn't go look at houses. We didn't do whatever. I got there first. I was there a few months without her. We bought a house, but our whole thing is we'll be happy anywhere. We really like each other. Didn't realize what it meant to have a child, by the way, and what time that
Nobody
changes.
does.
When we moved to St. Louis, she stopped working outside of the house. But a really cool thing happened. She started writing when we got there. I didn't even know it. Short of a story about her mom who just passed away when we moved there. Sent it to her grandfather, her mom's dad. And he entered into a contest. It was, I should know the name of the book. It was Chocolate for the Soul or Chicken Soup, one of those. And she got published in there. I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. And then she was pregnant again when we moved to Tampa. Same thing. Got the job opportunity. Let's just go. Like, just jump in and do it.
Yeah.
So that's her spirit.
Life's
And
an
she's so
adventure.
supportive of everything. And started writing a little bit more there. The St. Pete Times kind of built their online portal around her caricature, which is Suburban Diva, kind of like a modern day Irma Bobak. And
Sure.
just had a lot of fun with it. And a couple of books. Just had fun though. It was her outlet. But she would write about me, like my sheer stupidity and what we did or how we did things or broke things around the house and the kids. And as the family grew, writing's got a little bit more fun. When we moved here, she really just said, I'm going to give that up to make sure our kids transfer well. Because we were concerned. It's a couple rough ages to move. She still writes a little bit on her own just for herself, though. But if you met her, you'd understand she's just better. Much better than me. I mean, she gives to everyone. I mean, she's the
her
one
at a game.
Yes. Well, she's at every game, and she doesn't miss.
I know. I got to go.
It's funny when she's not at a game. That's when the fans do stop and say, "Well, where is she?"
Yeah.
Because they like her more than me. I mean, she's wonderful.
That's how it works.
Yeah, but she's kind to a fault. She believes she can cook anyone healthy. So if you get sick, she'll make you so much food that will get you better. I mean, she believes it. But
this is good.
Yeah, she gives of what she loves to do, and she's a wonderful cook. She loves the hosting. You come by our house, there's always 10 cars at our house.
How important, and not just do your best here, not just talking about your experience in your marriage with your life partner, and again, just relating to you, the support in your professional career pursuits, but even what you've seen with others in both good and bad dynamics there. How important is the right person, the right partner to people, professionally speaking, like getting to where they want to go in life?
I think it's everything. And we all know a lot of people that have attained, top status at a company or their profession. I'm not using the word success. They've hit it and they're not happy, or life is harder than it should be because they're on their second or third spouse, or they always made this a priority over something else. And, when you find the right spouse, life's easier and better. I don't care what you do for a living, because the important things are better. And, once you take care of the important things, your kids, your soul, if you will, everything is limitless. So
agree.
for me, that's not why we got married. Literally when we got married, we merged some bills. We just divided up some roles without even knowing it. We just celebrated our 33rd anniversary Saturday. Yeah, thank you. And life is so much easier. I'm David Poyle, who just retired, our GM. I think he's been married 55 years, and he talks about it quite a bit. He said, when you marry someone, that's more important than whatever job you have, because when you both do it well, you're going to raise kids that you might probably have a better relationship with it when your home is happy. And so we're just really fortunate, or I am, because of her.
So you found the right lady. Getting back to, from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, she married a hot dog cooker. I mean, think about that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Wow.
we ate well.
When
no
you
matter
when
what.
when you frame it that way, you really almost have to question her judgment.
Yeah.
You know,
It's from Michigan. I mean,
fair enough. That makes sense. No, you found the right lady. When you moved to Nashville to take the Preds job, did you find the right job? Was that the right decision?
oh, absolutely. And
How soon did you know that?
I really felt it during the interview. I mean, you just know. And as much as this was my first interview, when you win the cup or you win a championship, your name's just out there a little bit more. And I remember another team kind of pursued me, and I almost did it. Like I almost jumped in, but there was just something off with the owner, how he was dedicated to the community, what he saw with the team, what it could be. And I remember his point GM said to me, just take the job. If it doesn't work out, who cares? And I thought, well, I'm not taking a job just to take a job. And it was hard. I remember when I turned it down, my dad was like, what is wrong with you? You know, it was in the right city. All the things were good. But I knew in the interview here that I was going to come work for some really good people, but you still don't know until you're there. Right. And until you own it per se, you don't know what you have.
Without a doubt.
And you know, what I liked best, we had a couple challenges. I remember I did a few things that Tom, who was our chairman, one-on-one didn't agree with, but he let me do it. And 2 or 3 of those worked out. And he was the first one to come say, that was great. I was wrong. And then 2 or 3 didn't, but he was the one that came and supported you anyway. And Tom and Herb Fritch and Bill Haslam are just 3 really incredible guys to work for. But I knew pretty quickly, but I've said to a lot of people, if for whatever reason I ever leave the Preds, this is still home. We just won't leave. I mean, it's just such a great place to be.
It's a great town. Is it safe to say that you could make every right decision as the CEO, but if the team consistently is not putting out a good product, it's hard to be successful, and vice versa? You could, in theory, not necessarily make every right decision, but if the team's winning championships, your job is better?
The latter, 100% true. The former, the latter, a little bit. I don't like when sports teams say, well, we're losing, we can't run a good business. What I always say is you better run a really good business when the team's not playing well.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking from a revenue. If you're losing 5 times more than you're winning, it's just no matter what type of promotions or concessions, or like you're like, how do I get people to show up? That's where I was going.
Absolutely
with that.
harder.
Yeah.
At the same time, even when you have your down cycle years, right now, this is not the year we thought it would be. But what we did in the off season was the right moves, and not everything works out in the timing that you want it to be. But our fans also believe in what we're doing and why we're doing it, because we communicate. You know, the worse things are, the more we're out there. And I really think it's important. You know, Barry Trotz, our GM, is on the radio at least once a week. He also, just like myself, he walks the concourses. I mean, you don't see a lot of GMs in sports walking the concourses, or someone in my role. I'm on the radio once a week as well. I mean, you're talking about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what happened, and you're pretty honest. When you do that, you get a little latitude, you know, from your fans and where they're going, and your partners and sponsors. At the same time, our owners sit in the bowl. They're not in a suite, and we have an owner suite that different people use. We normally use it for entertaining, but there's something different with our team because we own when we fail, and we own when we're not doing what we think would happen, and we talk about it. So I think you're giving a little bit more latitude, but it's really important when things are going well, make sure you maximize what you're doing. When things aren't going that well, don't hide from potential growth.
Well, you touched on, like, this year hasn't gone the way you thought it would yet.
Yeah.
We're getting hot. All you got to do is get on a heater, sneak into the playoffs.
It's absolutely true.
And we got time, but we got to dig ourselves out. I guess where I'm going with this is you've had the opportunity to, I guess, preside over a Stanley Cup winning team, some hot teams here in Nashville that got very deep in the playoffs, and then teams that, whether it's underperformed or you just kind of knew coming in weren't going to do well. Like, what do you believe, or what have you seen separates the really good teams and the really bad ones? You know, in terms of, and here, as I say, there's talent on the ice. So we get that. I'm saying from a belief, from a mindset, from a culture.
Yeah, I think honesty. You know, when you look at the team that you have, and, you know, there are a couple of really good examples of teams that you look at and say, gosh, you know, that's who we wanted to be. So when I got here, you know, the Red Wings were a pretty incredible team. You know, they kind of just finished their run of that great stretch of Stanley Cups over a 12, 13-year period of time. The Blackhawks just started the first of their 3 in this modern era. Pittsburgh was in the middle of their 3 out of 4 cups in this era. And you looked at those teams, what do they all have in common? If they didn't win or they didn't do what they wanted to do, their GM, their coach, their owner, their whomever evaluated it. Like, what should it have been? Where can it go? And once we had the means to start investing in the team, we started having those, same conversations. So my first 2 years here, we made the second round. First time we got out of the first round. And the next 2 years after that, we recognized we weren't able to build on that team. We stepped back, missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. Part of it was Pecorino missed half a year because of an injury. We traded away some fan favorites because we were very honest about where could we go with that team. So you kind of cut it back down to grow ahead.
You had to kind of break it down to build it up.
Yeah. And then what happened is, we enjoyed our best 3, 4, 5 years, went to the Stanley Cup, came up 2 wins shy of the ultimate prize. Next year, we won the President's Trophy, the best record in hockey, lost in the second round, a 7-game, thriller to Winnipeg. It's probably the best series of that entire playoffs, two of the best teams in the league playing. And then made the playoffs a few years after that. But same thing a few years ago, it was, okay, how do we build on that team? Can we build on it? What should we do? I think honesty in who you are and what you are is really important. And that's the same, whether it's on ice performance, what are we doing in the offices, where are our sales programs, how are we running our rinks? You have to be honest. And when you surround yourself with people that are willing to do that, it's just easier.
Just an honest evaluation of everyone can honestly evaluate their strengths, but it's like an evaluation of their weaknesses.
Yeah. And to know that you have a colleague sitting next to you that's going to be honest with you as well and say, I know you don't want to hear this, but we need to do these things. And then you just take it on.
Have you ever had to fire a GM or a coach?
I've been really fortunate when I've been around when different guys have been fired. It's never fun, period. And, in our organization, we get a lot of direction from our owners, and I run certain things. The GM runs the team. But the hardest thing is when you separate. I mean, it just is, because whether you become best friends or just emotionally locked together, I mean, it's really hard. And, I don't care what position the person has, whether it's early in their career or as public as a coach or whomever, that person's going home that night and telling, their family or loved ones something. And that is rough. What's amazing to me about sports, and this your life as well, even when there's separations, how close you still are with those people, because it's very, very rarely personal, no matter how you feel in the moment. John Hines was just in our building, this weekend with Minnesota. The first time they came back and played, we had a suite, for his wife and his daughters, who were my daughter's ages, and you're still friends. You root for each other still, but it's hard. I mean, Barry Trotz, when he left our organization as a coach, as he says, he took a sabbatical, won a Stanley Cup with Washington, went to Long Island, but we're all still close. And I think that is a big testament to maybe how we do things and the type of people that we've chosen to have around. But it's awful. Absolutely awful.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Put you in the technology corner. What there's obviously a very quickly evolving landscape in the tech side, specifically around AI and LLMs. And I'd be interested what, if any, way you guys are integrating or at least exploring, all of the rapid advances in technology and how it can make you and your franchise more successful.
So it's funny. I'm 57 years old. So my early career was kind of defined by computers coming on board and, online commerce or internet commerce, to better technology to watch and absorb games and get stats and get things thrown at you. And I thought, this is the golden age. Life will never change as rapidly as it did in, that 15-year window from 90 to 05. Yeah. And you're right. And then all of a sudden you wake up and realize AI is so overused. I was in a meeting yesterday and someone said, I always put an AI as a revenue category. I said, well, what does that mean? I don't know. People think I'm smarter. And I just started laughing. He's right. At the same time, what AI has done for us is, it doesn't matter what part of our business you talk about. Let's sales for a minute. What it does to generate different types of leads and qualify them so quickly. We used to hire a company that would take all the people that bought a ticket last year, seasons, individual groups, and it would take them about 9 months to pare it down and do a scoring list, A through E. And then your guys would call, off this phone book, if you will. Today, that is done normally before puck drop on an individual game. I mean, it's just, and so the time our salespeople spend reach out to people that want to hear from them because it's topical is just so much better. From a scouting standpoint, I was talking to Mitch Korn, who we brought back. He's not our goalie coach. He's our director. of goaltending. Ben Vanderklok's our goalie coach, but Mitch is the goalie whisperer. I mean, he's more Vezina Cups under him than I think any other coach ever. But he watches roughly 12 goalies in our system. He looks at, 12 every night. There might be 8 guys playing in a game. If it weren't for AI breaking up different things, because he'll want to look at this type of a shot for this goalie, this type for this goalie. And now by the end of every single game, he can just open up a file and look at exactly what he wants. I mean, it's just amazing. Our scouts, they're always eyeballing things, and it's a gut, get to know the family, who they are, how are they walking on the ice, how are they walking away after a loss or a penalty, all the intangibles. That's what they see. But then what they have at their disposal is just all the AI generated, stats, what's important for what we want to see at that time. It's really amazing how it's changing, and it's changing by the second. It's amazing.
It's evolving so fast.
Yeah, almost too fast for an old guy.
Not yet. What are some daily habits or routines you do to maintain, your focus, motivation, strong mental edge? Like, are there kind of practical things you do every day?
Yeah, I'll give you my pre-pandemic answer because I think we all changed a little bit during the pandemic. But I'm an early riser. I'm not a big sleeper, and I love to read. So normally back then at least, I'd get up super early and you'd read 2 or 3 newspapers, a little bit on social media, probably a little too much. And then I'd always spend maybe half hour.
Applying to those Anon accounts.
Yeah, exactly.
With your Anonic burner account.
I don't have one of those yet, but I might get one after this. But then I always try to spend at least half hour a day just reading, non-periodicals, from fiction to nonfiction to bios. I mean, just to get your brain thinking a little bit. A long time ago, someone told me, if you want to speak well or okay or write well, read a little bit more. I happen to love reading. I'm always up, with my kids, see them off to school, maybe drive them. That's always important, to me. Get to work. I don't want to be the first person at work anymore. I mean, now before I had my title, now I was the first guy in, the last one out. I think if I did that now, it puts different pressure on other people. And then be open. Want to talk to a few different people. I try to talk to 2 or 3 kids in college or emerging from college every week to help them on the path. That just makes you feel a little bit good.
Sure, giving back.
Yeah, try to volunteer at least an hour or 2 a week on certain things and explore something that's foreign to you. I always try to force myself to do something I'm not comfortable with. Try to work out, most mornings. Sometimes, people force out those early meetings. I will tell anyone that listens, if you want me to come to a breakfast meeting, it better mean something really good for our organization. I do not understand why anybody would start the day off in a 90-minute meeting. I just don't understand it. I think it's a waste of time. I'll rarely have a lunch meeting with you either. I'm not a big lunch guy either.
Big dinner meeting?
Yeah, but before our events, every Tuesday we try to get with different partners. We'll bring 6 or 7 partners together because we have a place where people want to come.
Yeah, I was going to say your whole career, especially in sports, like let's just say hockey, like 2-3 nights a week. Maybe not away games, but it is a later, it's work, right?
It's nocturnal and it's still fun. But, most of your game day is spent, the 2 hours before puck drop. Ideally, you're entertaining someone or visiting somebody. Yeah. Maybe it's, opposing team. And then during the game, intermission, people always laugh because I'm in my seat during the whole game. Intermission, you run up to, 2 or 3 suites or see some people jump on TV or radio. But that's kind of my routine. It's pretty simple. On an off night, if we don't have a concert, we don't have a game, and none of my kids have a game now. I wish my kids have more games because they're all older now. Yeah. We love to eat dinner together. We always did as a family. With our oldest son living so close to us, with our granddaughter, we see them quite a bit. Our 17-year-old, who's a senior in high school, hates being the only child right now. One daughter away at college, one lives in Columbus now. And she hates the attention. She loves it and hates it, but now it's the 3 of us. So I think eating together is important.
Yeah, she got all eyes on her.
Oh, it's awful for her.
Is there when you're not at, it's a away game or they're not? No, excuse me, they're not playing. It's a night off. Do you still watch a lot of hockey? I mean, are you evaluating your industry, so to speak?
Yeah, we're on a few fronts. So one, we love hockey as a family. Sure. It's always on in the background. So when you're watching another broadcast, part of you is just focusing on, oh my gosh, got to steal that. That's pretty cool. Look what they're doing there. Texting a lot of people during the games. My counterparts, hey, who's this partner? What are you doing here? But then you're also looking at the players too. Mm-hmm. Now, first one, I'm not a scout, not a coach, I'm not our GM, But when Barry talks to me about, a player, hey, we're thinking about this or this, what do you think about this player?
You might be able to say, oh, I think,
you want to know.
some familiarity.
And, what I like about Barry is when I tell him, I don't know who that is. And it's not often, but that candidness is important too. There are a lot of guys in my position that think they're a coach or a GM or a scout. I laugh.
That's how they get in trouble.
Yeah, I think so.
Jerry Jones.
I would never mention any names, but I'm glad he's in the Giants division.
Yeah, that's right. You're a Giants fan.
Then again, we have nothing to brag about this year as a football team.
Fair.
Or next year.
Yeah.
Or the next 10
Giants
years.
is just like optically, with the Saquon leaving and having the year he had. And then I saw some video where the GM of the Giants, his son was like sitting on the couch on draft. I don't know how this got out. I was like, oh, or maybe this was on like a Hard Knocks.
It was a Hard Knocks. By the way, we should have listened to his son.
That's what I'm saying. His son is like 14, probably on TikTok.
Right.
And the dad's probably just like trying to involve him. He knows the TV's on. Hey, son, who do you think? He goes, he's like a 14-year-old.
He flips it off.
He's like, oh, you want my opinion? You take Jaden Daniels. Like, that's who you go with if you actually want to make the right. And like, anyway, he doesn't. And then Jaden Daniels is just, I think, runaway rookie of the year.
I do think it was an unfortunate circumstance of one being a Hard Knocks. Like, I admire the teams that do it. We've done a few, similar
the NFL
things.
Gives them a choice.
They really, well, I guess you have a choice, but if you choose the wrong way, life's not great.
Yeah, there you go. Fair enough. I was like, I don't think.
I almost felt badly for him though, especially now how things worked out.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But at the same time,
you've been in you're on that side of the wall.
I'll tell you though, during our game tonight, and it's a late start, 9:30, I'll have no less than 20 texts from my sons telling me how dumb I am.
Yeah.
What we should have done. The difference is there's not a camera on it.
No, not a camera. Why? Yeah. Question: why would you have a game at 9:30? Like, what's the?
We're on the West Coast. We're in San Jose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. I was gonna say you're no home games.
Yeah, those selfish guys out there won't play at 5 o'clock. For my benefit. So
it's too many fires. So is there a resource that you'd recommend for the audience? Like, are there courses or books or anything that's helped you over the years in terms of your personal, professional development that you really would point to?
Yeah, I was hoping that question would come up because I laugh at business books. Yeah. You can read the titles of each chapter and you're done with the book for the most part. And by the way, the guys that write them normally have never really achieved a whole lot.
Oh yeah.
With that said, there are a couple of books I absolutely love. And I think it was John Collins, or probably his first name wrong. I never remember an author's name or the book I'm reading, but Good to Great is that one. Yeah. That was one that in 03, 04, John Tortorella gave to every one of our players, and a lot of people in the organization read it. Inside our Stanley Cup ring is that mantra. There's some good principles in there. I still don't think you have to read it cover to cover, but there are a handful of things that are good. But my favorite one is Fun is Good. And it's by Mike Veck. His father was Bill Veck, one of the greatest promoters in the history of sports. Mike is his son. He's responsible for Disco Inferno Night in Chicago. A great promoter himself, but early career was a little rocky. But his whole thing, and I love the mantra, fun is good. If work is fun, everyone's going to enjoy it a little bit more, be part of it a little bit more. And you don't have to act serious to be serious. And I always tell kids, read that one. Because when things are good, celebrate them. When they're down, figure out why they're down and get out of it. So some good principles. Beyond that, I tell people, just read. Read. I always have 3 books working. A bio. Whether I don't care who the person is. It's always intriguing. If we know their name 200 years later, they did something. So those are really, really good. Always have some weird fiction. Whether it's whoever it is for you.
For sure.
Because it makes you let your mind escape a little bit. And then, there are other books from time to time, but business books, it's not me. People always ask me, should my daughter or son get their master's degree? Should they get this? I always believe, and again, I only have a bachelor's degree. I wish I went on right away and got my master's. That, education's a good thing. It really is. And not to make more money. It bothers me when people are like, well, they can make more money if they did this instead. Well, maybe. Education's good. It really is. It makes you think about things differently. My son's over at Vanderbilt right now. I should know the grad program, the good one that I could not get into, I bet. And it's a lot of work. He's almost done now. He's balancing a full-time job, a baby, an expecting baby, volunteers, coaching. But I look at him and think it's important he's doing it. So I always tell people the more education you have, the better. Now, you temper that a little bit, of course.
You touched on, I love how did books versus how to. Like how did is biographies. Like how did they do that?
Right.
Even if it's not in my industry, like real estate, most biographies are not about that. I love, if nothing else, if I don't even take away like a practical strategy, I get inspired.
It's weird, isn't it?
I struggle with the how to. Like it's like, hey, this is how you build an organization. 5 easy steps. It's like I about halfway through, I'm like, I don't want to.
Like, why am I doing this? It's a waste of time and wonderful guys writing them. I'm sure. I like the guys that write them and give them away.
And you're right, not to be a hater, but I feel like half the time that people wrote it, you're like, well, have you actually built it? It's like, no, but this is how you are going to. You're like, right. Okay.
Or financial experts that declare bankruptcy twice.
How would you? Well, maybe they should. Maybe they should be writing books, just not those. So it's last question for you is that's funny. It's just like, how would you want someone close to you, whether it's Tom Wilson or Ron Campbell or guys you've been close to, or anyone who's ever worked with you? How would you want them to describe your mentality and your mindset, your approach to you in your roles over the years, like your legacy? So
a couple of words. I mean, creative. I mean, I like challenging the norm. I think the more you do that, the more fun you'll have, but you're also going to find a few things that are new as opposed to this is the way we've always done it. There's always a better way to do things, I think. So creativity, care. Anyone that knows me well, I'll tell anyone the hardest part about my job or any job are HR issues. What I mean by that is not just when someone does something wrong or an employee's going through a tough time. Maybe it's a health issue for them or a loved one. And I think if you're not there for those people during those tough times, you're missing a big part of what could be in your organization. So I think caring is the other. And just don't be afraid to take on big things. When the YWCA came to me and we're explaining the men program on the goal is very simple, to end violence on women in Nashville. It's a pretty big goal, but you think about it, if we ever achieve that, it'd be incredible. If we just improve the numbers a little bit, it's a big thing. But when we took it on together and we funded the whole program and still do, people were like, why are you wasting your time with that? You're never going to solve that. It's like, well, we're never going to make it better either by not taking that on. So I'm like that with almost every goal. We put up on our walls when I first got here, one goal to be the #1 venue in America built around a Stanley Cup championship team. And I remember some people are afraid of success came forward like, why would you do that? That means if we don't do that, we failed. Like, you're right. By the way, we keep score, standings, and everything. We have, that's what it is about. And if you're afraid of that goal, this might not be the place for you. It doesn't mean we're going to do it every year. But if you're not chasing the ultimate prize, why are you doing anything?
How are we doing this year? Are we going to hit it?
So the goal, absolutely the goal. When we went to the Stanley Cup in 2017, we were the 16th ranked team. We were the last team in the playoffs and got to the Stanley Cup. When we won the cup, when I was in Tampa, we were in last place in
I'm saying you just got to sneak
in the winter.
Sneak in and get hot.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of good examples. Last place teams win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. There are better examples of first place teams.
Yeah, there's correlation.
In the cup. But right now, let's keep playing. Fun hockey. We're playing right now the way we thought we would. And I mean, last year we went on an 18-game streak. Yeah. And let's get back to that this year and have fun.
Well, Sean, I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm excited to come take in some Preds games. I'll bring the kids.
Can't wait to have you there. Next time you're in the hood, wave. At least slow down at my stop sign when you're blowing through it. Otherwise, a tennis ball might get thrown at you, man.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. It's a really cool story, especially on the sports side, because, it's a world of athletes, but not someone on the on the
boring side.
No, I was going to say like the ownership and operation side, because you're right. So often, when everybody, I swear, in America is like in some way connected to sports, and whether it's basketball, football, baseball, hockey, and you're always thinking about the players and the coaches. But these are big businesses.
And getting bigger by the day, which is amazing.
Well, yeah, the valuations, the revenue. I mean, these are it's sitting down with the CEO of a $400 million revenue company. That's a big company with 400 employees.
And again, the most important client though we still have is that 6-year-old.
That's right.
That someday wants to play on the ice, court, field, whatever it is. Yeah. Because that really is why people care about sports. It's you're passing it down to your son or your daughter and sharing memories. And there's that hope that maybe I'm the one.
No doubt. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.